Alrighty, hello there. My name is Madeline, and I'm going to be doing a passage analysis on a bit of the novel My Name is Asher Lev by Chaim Potok. A little bit of background before I start reading. Asher is a very artistic kid, and his dad, Arya, is very dedicated to the Jewish church, and he disapproves heavily of Asher's artistic talents. He denies that they're talents, he thinks that they're sinful, and Arya has just come home, and it's the first time he's seen his son in a while, and this is one of their first interactions together. Oh, and I'll be reading this first and then doing my analysis. He had lost a lot of weight. He looked weary and gaunt. He did not greet me. He ordered me to sit down. My mother looked small and pale. He knew about the oil color set. He knew about the visits to the museum. He had seen the sketchbook filled with drawings of Jesus and nudes. He had spent half a year of his life creating yeshivos and teaching Torah and Hasidus all over Europe. Then he had returned to America and had discovered that his own home was inhabited by pagans. He was in an uncontrollable rage. I had never before seen him in such a rage. Even years ago, when he had once talked on the telephone about how Russians treated Jews, there had not been this quality of relentless and lashing fury to his anger. My drawings had touched something fundamental to his being. He kept talking about my drawings of that man. He would not pronounce the name. Did I know how much Jewish blood had been spilled because of that man? Did I know how many Jews had been killed in the name of that man during the Crusades? Did I know that the reason Hitler had been able to slaughter 6 million Jews without too much complaint from the world was that for 2,000 years the world had been taught that Jews, not Romans, had killed that man? Did I know that his father, Olav Hasholam, my grandfather, had been murdered by a Russian peasant who was celebrating a holiday having to do with that man? And the other drawings, the drawings of women and girls. Didn't I know that the body was a gift of the Ribono Shel Olam, that the Torah forbade us to treat it without modesty, that such drawings were vile, that they followed in the ways of the Goyim, that Jews, Torah Jews, would never think of drawing any such things? The body was a private and sacred domain. To display that privacy in a painting was disgusting. And look what all the time I wasted drawing it had done to my schoolwork. I acted as if I weren't going to school at all. What was the matter with me? Where had I been born? Whose son was I? What had I been learning all these years? How could I have done such things? Why wasn't I studying? Did I want him to regret all the work he had done in Europe? Did I want to destroy the task he had chosen for himself? Did I want to shame him? Did I want to shame myself? And then I did skip a bit of text just to get to kind of the heart of what I wanted to emphasize here. My father said to me at the kitchen table next morning, "Asher, stop drawing with your fork on the napkin and eat." I put the fork back into the plate of eggs in front of me. I was thinking that the coffee in my mother's cup might make a good color to wash across the face I had drawn the night before. I felt something on my hand, something very hard and tight, and I looked down and saw my father's fingers clenched around my wrist. I stared in astonishment at the fingers, saw the bones jut out from beneath the flesh, saw the ridges of the knuckles, then felt the pain move swiftly through my arm. He was squeezing the wrist of my right arm. His face, pale within its frame of red beard, was contorted with rage. I cried out. My mother shouted something. Above the noise of her shout, I heard something clatter to the table. The fork. I had without thinking begun to use the fork again as a drawing instrument. My mother shouted something again. I began to cry. So to begin with my analysis, going back to the beginning, I picked out the word small used to describe Asher's mother. I believe that this word small is used to kind of compare her influence on Asher with that of his father's. His mother is she's a very quiet character here. She has no voice. It's only Asher's father who's giving him these rules. And I think the word small is a very accurate descriptor of her physical stance and also her verbal and kind of parental stance towards Asher. Then he had spent half a year of his life creating yeshivos and teaching Torah and Hasidus all over Europe. The underlined text there. This really is the first glimpse in this passage of how high of a pedestal that Arya puts himself up on. Even the words in white text there, creating and teaching, those are both things that God does for us. He created us and he taught us how to live life. So using those words, in my opinion, kind of puts him in his own mind on a God level. And I think, sorry, I forgot to say this at the beginning, I think all of this can kind of be interpreted as Arya's dialogue towards Asher. Maybe summary, maybe direct, but definitely his own thoughts that he verbalized towards him. Then he had returned to America and had discovered that his own home. This, again, is repetitive in the fact that Arya emphasizes how he thinks of himself so highly. His own home was inhabited by pagans. And then uncontrollable, that word there. I thought that was kind of ironic because the Lord tells us to have self-control. It's one of the fruits of the Spirit. And here he is in an uncontrollable rage against his son. Pronounce, that word there. I picked that word out because it kind of shows how, just the level of distaste that Arya has towards Jesus. That he can speak, but he cannot pronounce his name. And then the blue words, did I know, did I know, did I know? The repetition there really emphasizes that he is not teaching his son. He is belittling him. He is shaming him for even considering the thought of Jesus, the thought of art. All right, and the semicolons here, I think, really emphasize the kind of just the intensity of it all. The fact that this is all one sentence is just a lot for Asher to take in. And the word forbade, that implies punishment. It implies that these words are an easy punishment on Asher. He should be deserving of a lot more for treating a woman's body without modesty. And to display. I chose display because I figured that he's focusing more on the display rather than the creation, the use of Asher's talents. And the word disgusting here. I thought that disgusting is definitely an opposite of beautiful. And it kind of sets up a binary of you have to choose art or you have to choose religion, beauty or disgusting. And the last underlined thing here, whose son was I? That is another, it goes back to Arya's selfishness in this whole speech here. Whose son was I? He's focusing on himself. He's playing the victim here, big time. Here we have just more emphasis on the selfishness. He plays the victim here again. Did I want him to regret all the work he had done in Europe? Did I want to destroy the task he had chosen for himself? That little part right there, he had chosen for himself. Not referring to God's choice of his calling, but the choice he chose. The word wash. You might have noticed that all of these sentences are very short. They're very kind of just one after the other. But when Asher thinks about art, a whole new level of vocabulary and sentence structure comes to the page. That's why I chose wash to pick out. And I'm about to run out of time, but yeah, there's not much else to say about that. Thanks for watching.